Maybe some of you guys remember that Hillary Clinton once said, prepare yourself for some wisdom, that it's the women who suffer when men go off to fight. She seriously said that. The thing is, there was really no pushback. But that is the mentality, that whatever men are going through, whatever hardships you have, we are the ones suffering. And today, I'm going to share with you an article from The Independent, written by Helen Coffey, a woman, which is important because this is a man's issue. But the other thing that I hope you've noticed over the last many generations is that the women are the ones talking about how men should deal with their problems, how men should act, what masculinity should be. And it's getting worse and worse. I hope you guys have stretched because we are going to follow along with these mental gymnastics. Welcome back to Far From Eden. The title gets me angry already. This was actually published last November on the 9th. But this is believe me, I looked up articles about male loneliness, and there have been a lot. And they basically all say the same thing. But I thought the narrative they want us to all believe was the best laid out in this one. I'm sorry if I sound snarky already. It's not at you guys, it's at this. So, the best way to help women end the male loneliness epidemic. Boys are socialized from as young as 4 to reject deep connections in favor of performative masculinity. The result? A breeding ground for misogyny, hate, and fascism. Helen Coffey investigates how the negative effects of male loneliness are being felt across every aspect of our society. Did you hear that? Your pain is hurting us. Stop it. Which is, you'll see so many contradictions in this article. It'll be, your pain is hurting us, stop it. But also, you're socially conditioned to be this way. Like I said, mental gymnastics. Give me a child until he is 7, and I will show you the man. The Greek philosopher Aristotle famously once said. He meant that those formative years are the most important, that the way we raise children when they're young lays the foundations for the adults they will become. I've been saying this. I've been saying it particularly about women. I'm going to remind you of the interview I did a few days ago with the lovely young lady, the God-fearing young lady. And all of these things were instilled in her at a very young age. You have to get to the girls before they're 5 and instill in them accountability, the idea that there are consequences. And if you want to raise her as a Christian, you have to instill that stuff. Don't say they're too young. No, that's exactly when you need to do it. You miss your chance if you don't. So Aristotle is right, but they're going to twist it. For a 23-year-old theory, 2,300-year-old theory, it's aged remarkably well. Pretty much all modern psychotherapy is predicated on the premise that what happens in infancy and the relationship we have with our primary caregivers is fundamental to what we're like and the issues we'll struggle with later in life. And arguably, his words could be just as relevant when it comes to what has been dubbed the male loneliness epidemic. Notice as we go through this that they do acknowledge that male loneliness is getting worse and worse. These issues are getting worse and worse. At the same time, it correlates with women, mothers, being in the workforce and absent from raising their children. They used to be in the home taking care of their families a long time ago at this point. But I just want you to notice that correlation. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. And notice how long it takes them to use the word mother. And arguably, his words could be just as relevant when it comes to what has been dubbed the male loneliness epidemic. The way we bring up boys seems to create lonely men. The negative consequences of this are being felt throughout society. And I would add to that, and the thing they're not saying, is that, yes, the way we bring up boys does create lonely men. When little boys don't have their mothers, it is extremely detrimental to their progress, to having that intimate relationship where they feel safe and can be vulnerable, share their emotions, stuff like that. If mom's not there, or if mom's too busy, or if mom, whatever, that's a rejection. That's a betrayal. That's an abandonment. And that will break a little boy's heart. He will go forward in life feeling unsafe to be vulnerable, to share those innermost feelings, because it's not safe to do so. The fact that loneliness has been on the rise in recent years is well documented. In 2023, the World Health Organization went so far as to declare loneliness a global health threat. The US Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, intentionally picked the term epidemic to hammer home the perceived health risks. Perceived? I want you to see all the contradictions. So they say perceived health risk, and then say research shows that loneliness is as bad for you as smoking a dozen cigarettes a day. So I guess it's not really perceived, is it? They are minimizing the crisis. They are minimizing the crisis that faces men. And I see it every day in our Discord server, in my emails, in the comments. It is a crisis. Every data point shows us that. But they don't want to address the real reason. They want to say, it's hurting us women. Get it together. Man up. And in the same article, they'll say, no, don't say man up. This is why y'all know you can't win. Because they tell you one thing and you get chastised for it. You try the other thing, you get chastised for it. Man bad. Woman perfect. All right. Age-wise, research has shown a horseshoe effect. With the oldest and youngest most at risk, 1 in 4 people feel lonely, regardless of where they are in the world, while between 5 and 15% of adolescents are lonely. There's a crisis of mothers being absent, but no one's going to talk about that. So that's why I am. Quote, there is evidence that loneliness has increased over time in places like the United Kingdom and Australia, with a notable rise during the cooties stuff in 2020 and its associated restrictions, says Marley Bauer, a research fellow at the University of Sydney, who co-wrote a paper entitled Predictors of Male Loneliness Across Life Stages. Another woman writing about male loneliness. Are men not allowed to write about it? Or is that misogyny? Oh, it's probably misogyny. Oops, what was I thinking? While she thinks calling loneliness an epidemic can be slightly misleading, quote, since loneliness doesn't spread like a contagious disease. I'm going to stop right there and push back on that. Okay, so loneliness doesn't spread like a contagious disease, but divorce does. Studies have shown that if, women have these friend groups, right? If one woman in the friend group gets divorced, then the others are more likely to get divorced. That is a bit of a contagion. And a big reason these men are lonely is because their families have been taken away from them. Huh. Again, another correlation that I'm sure is just a coincidence. Please share in the comments what you guys think and if you relate to any of this, and hit the like button if you're enjoying this video. I really want this video to get spread as much as possible because I want the men who are lonely to know they're not the only ones. The other day, I actually had a man ask me, do men have friends? That's what inspired this video. Do men have friends? Do other people have friends? Why don't I have any friends? They start to, because men are always accountable. That's their first go-to. What did I do? Where are my friends? The thing is, you're not alone, no pun intended. It is a crisis, and it is being minimized, and it is being used against you. Makes me mad. So it doesn't spread like a contagion, right? She agrees that the term does capture the urgency of the issue and the need to address it at a societal level. Those are just empty politician words. Yeah, it does capture the urgency of the issue. The issue is urgent. They downplay it and then say the truth. I will say, this is a bit of a woman trick. I know all people can do it, but I've noticed it lately. They'll say truth, right? And they'll wrap up the truth in things that contradict it. And what they are trying to do is get you to grab onto the things that actually contradict it. It's gaslighting. This whole article is gaslighting. You're not in the reality you think you're in. This is the reality. Gaslighting is when someone tries to convince you that what you're experiencing isn't real. And I mean, there are women are writing these articles. Where are the men writing these articles? Well, they probably are, but they're just not pushed out there, because I will stand by my theory that all media is propaganda, especially the stuff that gets really pushed out there. I think more people have realized that since the whole USAID thing came out. Loneliness is clearly not unique to the male half of the population. And in fact, men tend to underreport loneliness compared to women. Right there. Like I said, say the truth and then say the lie first. It's not unique to the male half of the population. That's true. There are some lonely women, but the crisis is with the men. It's the men who are suffering more. And then they say right after it the truth. And in fact, men tend to underreport loneliness compared to women. Yeah, men are less likely to admit it. They really are. Especially, this is obviously written by either a British person or an Australian person. But in a second, they're going to basically talk about the rates of men taking a permanent goodbye solution that I don't want any of you to do. I want to stop it. That it's happening more and more in England and Wales. So if you are interviewing people or polling men in England about, are you lonely? That is the land of the stiff upper lip. That is the land where, chin up. Yeah, they're less likely to admit it. Yet its effects can be more extreme in men. Rates of taking that not good permanent solution in England and Wales, for example, are more than 3 times higher in men than women. According to a study from King's College London, men who identified as lonely drank significantly more alcohol than their non-lonely counterparts. Lonely women, by contrast, drank less. I don't know if I believe that. And I want to know, did they poll these people? Because the little wine drinky ladies, not sure they're being honest about it. And I think they're saying, I drink less. I only have like 1 glass of wine a night. And the glass of wine is filled up all the way. I don't think so. I really don't. You can't trust it with the polls. Remember, the polls told us that Kamala Harris was, very, very popular. Certainly, a lack of friendships, particularly intimate ones, is much more common to men. Research conducted in 2021 found that 15% of men claim to have no close friends, a whopping 12% higher than 30 years ago. According to the King's College study, older men rated their friendships as lower quality than women. This is a male. That's all that knock was. Y'all are just in my apartment with me. It's not like a real studio and stuff. Okay. It's clearly growing. And like I said, it correlates to mothers not being the ones who are the primary caretakers of their children. They're off in daycare and they're being raised by someone else. Because, she's got to be a girl boss. Or it takes 2 incomes to raise a family these days. I just heard about another guy locally. I know I don't tell you guys where I live, but locally, he's blue collar, right? He makes enough for his wife to stay home. And no, he's not like an electrician or a plumber, right? It's possible, especially when the man handles the finances. Just saying. Of course, that's just my theory. You guys let me know what you think. I just use my eyeballs and wisdom instead of just believing the narrative all the time. And you got to read between the lines too and see what they're not saying. And then you get a whole different picture of what's actually going on. Sometimes, a lot of times, lies are very revealing. Especially when you know it's a lie. You go, oh, this is what you want me to believe. I see your agenda. Oh, I lost my spot again. It's much more common in men. Research conducted in 2021 found that 15%, I know I read this already, but we're just going to backtrack so we remember what we're doing, found that 15% of men claim to have no close friends, a whopping 12% higher than 30 years ago. 30 years ago, that's like the 90s. According to the King's College study, older men rated their friendships as lower quality than women. Don't forget, this also goes hand in hand with the divorce rate. It's just another coincidence. More poignantly still, a 2023 study from nonprofit Equimundo, Center for Masculinities and Social Justice. I wonder if that's an NGO. Found that the majority of men agreed with the statement, "No one really knows me well." It hurts. Young men were by far the most likely to agree, totaling 2/3 of those aged 18 through 23 years old. It's really bad when boys are raised without a more traditional type mother. And I don't mean the trad wife, blah, blah, blah. I mean actually a mother that is there, that prioritizes the family and who raises their kids, homeschools their kids even. I mean, I know that a lot of people still don't see that as an option, but it really can be if you prioritize it. These are abandoned boys. What I see is abandoned boys, abandoned by their mothers. Is it any wonder? They're getting it from both ends. If you're sort of abandoned by your mother as a child, and then you are 18 through 23, and you're looking at the dating situation and how women are not choosing average men anymore. And they're not even wanting a serious anything until after 30 or whatever. Rejection from both sides. And as we're reading in The Decline of the American Male, career, career, career. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Do your job. Do this, do that. Pulling them in the direction to pay taxes, a lot of taxes. Man, the state loves your taxes. And rejecting you on both ends. And then having the nerve to say it's your fault. It's clear as day to me now. I mean, doing this every day, studying this every day, doing our literary archaeology and digging into the past and just basically seeing how it was done really helps me to know where we are today. And they don't want people like me saying this. They don't want it. They want this. They want to blame you, shame you, and then ask you, why don't you have any intimate relationships? Maybe because you're blaming and shaming them all the time. Seems pretty obvious to me. But don't you speak up. Don't you say anything. You're not allowed to have male spaces. The Boy Scouts aren't even a male space anymore. This article goes on to talk about what they think about boys trying to have their own spaces. You're not going to believe what they say. You're not going to believe it. This whole thing is why I'm so riled up. But I'm glad I found it, because I'm like, good. I'm glad you're saying this baloney that you think. Go ahead and tell me who you are. Evil people shaping a narrative. They don't really care. This articles on male loneliness, they don't care. They just know what's going on, and it's another way to shame you and say women are suffering. Think of all the women that suffered during World War I and World War II, when hundreds of thousands of men, died. Oh, poor women. I saw a meme the other day where there's a woman on the left in early 20th century clothes. And it says poor Betty didn't get to go to college. And on the other side, it's poor Frank didn't get to live. That's how we look at it. We never talk about the things that really affect men. You got to ask yourself, why? I want to talk about societal, and not just that. They actually admitted that this male loneliness crisis is across the world. You know what's also across the world? Feminism. You know what's also across the world? Women not being the caretakers anymore. On one hand, women are shamed for that. Aren't you going to get a job? Don't you want a real life? Et cetera, et cetera. That happens when we're young. And yeah, okay, calm down, Aaron, calm down. Think about that. 2 out of 3 men coming out of boyhood are in a state where they believe no one really knows who they are or understands what they're feeling. That should be the mother. The mother should be the one who knows who they are and creates that safe space for them to be who they are. Father teaches them when that's appropriate to share and not appropriate to share. You can't have men defending the country, which I say going to foreign wars is not defending our country, but actually if there was an invasion, kind of is. But anyway, if they're you can't. It's unstable. But they should be able to share those things and express those things, their vulnerabilities, to their mothers first and then to their wives. But if we're in this dating culture, you're not going to share it with the girl you're dating. I hope. That's not safe. Dating has been horrible. That's another subject. I mean, dating is relatively new. If some of you are young, you should just know that dating is a relatively new phenomenon. And we're going to get into that with our next book series. I'm so excited to share with you. It is before 1958. So stay tuned for that. A little like preview commercial. Okay, that was Dr. Michael Reichert who said that. Founding director of the Center for the Study of Boys and Girls Lives at the University of Pennsylvania and the author of How to Raise a Boy, The Power of Connection to Build Good Men. So we actually have a man talking about this. But it's from a university, and universities are pretty much Marxist by now. And you can't have Marxism without feminism. You just can't. These numbers show that it's not about an individual pathology, he tells me. It's systemic and structural. There is something inherent in the way we raise boys that leads them to, quote, live behind a mask and feel isolated, not only from their peers, but from their parents and families too. Right. I was about to say about how they're abandoned by their mothers, but they're going to say it and twist it in just a minute. While a boys will be boys narrative attempts to pin unhealthy masculine behaviors on nature rather than nurture, the risk paints a picture in which boys feel forced to retreat from intimate relationships. That's not true. They don't feel forced. They don't have that connection with their mother. And they're shamed. They're just shamed. You guys know. You guys know. If you cry, if you dare to cry, you know the kind of blowback you're going to get. And yet they tell you to be more emotional. They tell you to be more in touch with your feelings. And then you do. What happens? You're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. You cannot win. Much cited research from Stanford lecturer Judy Chu in her book, When Boys Become Boys, Development, Relationships, and Masculinity, found something disturbing starts happening from the age of 4. She observed a group of children over the course of 2 years at first. The boys connected with each other physically and emotionally and engaged in tender displays of affection. But as time went on, the dynamics of these friendships dramatically shifted as boys pulled away, avoiding vulnerability and creating emotional distance. I think they just start really going from babies. They have to start growing up and eventually become men. They cannot stay babies. But do you see this? It's like a shame. And they want to say it's not nature, it's nurture. Men are men and women are women, and we always have been. You know, we're different. We're not just with different, reproductive parts. We are different. Sometimes it's like we're different species. Quote, they were receiving strong enough messages that they needed to, quote, act like a boy, that they radically changed over the course of 2 years, says Dr. Reichert. In that time, they went from present to pretense by way of posturing. They learned to act the part, but they weren't doing it because they wanted to pretend. They were doing it because they felt that that was required of them. I don't think that's entirely true. I still think they're being shamed both ways. And I think they're probably emotionally awkward. Because like I said, if your mother's not there for you the way I believe it's intended to be, you're going to be a little awkward about how you share, and you're going to be a little emotionally unregulated, aren't you? But you're a boy, and your nature is going to be, play fighting, rough and tumble, because you have to learn, boys especially have to learn where the limits are, so that when they get older, they're not thinking, everything be nice, don't be boys, and then they're unregulated with their emotions and full of testosterone, and that's when you have a very dangerous man. Having set up the first ever emotional literacy program at an all-boys school in the US, he has seen firsthand that boys really do desire intimate connection. Of course they do. Oh my God, men have hearts. Newsflash. Though voluntary, not mandatory, the program has become one of the school's most popular, providing an oasis in a desert where boys can share their emotions peer to peer. They flock to it, says Dr. Reichart. What they exercise in there is what they're dying to do, but can't give permission to themselves to do. Right. Because, I think subconsciously, they're just like, why would I do this? I'm going to be abandoned. I'm going to be judged. I'm going to be shunned. It's not safe to be vulnerable. Chu's study also showed that boys started to change in how they bullied one another and the girls around them. Look at how they define bullying, you guys. How they bullied one another and the girls around them, creating boys' clubs and ostracizing girls from joining in with games. Maybe they don't want to play with girls. Maybe girls aren't good at kickball. Maybe they want to play basketball and they want to be rough and they don't want to hurt the girls. You know what I mean? It's not against the girls. And I will have you know, people who are writing this article, I have seen plenty of t-shirts, girl power, boys, what is it? Girls rule, boys drool. And, signs on girls' bedrooms, no boys allowed. That's all fine, apparently. But when boys want to do it, that's ostracizing the girls. No wonder they have trouble forming relationships. They're like, I don't know what I'm allowed to say. I don't know what I'm allowed to do. I'm being accused of all these things. It starts when you're boys. People talk about the dating crisis and the divorce crisis, and that's true, but it's starting young. We can start to see the way boys are taught to devalue women's presence or femininity and dominate boys who don't conform. For example, bullying a boy if he wants to play with girls' toys, explains Caroline Hayes, Equimundo's Senior Strategic Initiatives Officer. I'm getting mad, so it's harder to read. I'm just going to say, their definition of bullying, guys rib on each other, and it's the way they correct some behavior. And obviously, I can't say too much because YouTube, Google, all that stuff. But you guys know what I mean. You guys rib each other. And that's literally how you bond and stuff like that. It is not what women do. We don't understand it. Therefore, we shouldn't comment on it or say it's bad. So of course boys are going to do that. Here they're going to vilify it again. Maybe that's how they get closer with their friends. Maybe they're trying to build intimate relationships with their friends. And that's one of the ways how. But this is just going to say, no, they're bullying. No, this is what? Toxic? I can't believe they haven't used the phrase toxic masculinity yet, probably because we're all sick of hearing it. And we're all calling it out. They keep shifting. Okay. Clearly, media messaging and popular culture play a part. But parents are complicit too. Oh, parents, yes, okay. Even if unconsciously so. Research as part of the Global Boyhood Initiative, based on interviews with fathers of boys in Bolivia, found that 50.2% said that they discourage their sons from, quote, acting like girls. 77% said that when they raise their boys, they teach them that care work is a woman's responsibility. A 2020 survey of parents in the US revealed that 94% believed being emotionally strong was the most important thing for their sons. Well, it's very important because we have the other side of the population who has a lot more emotions. And we need to balance each other out. It doesn't mean that men can't have emotions. It just means that they know that there are times and places for them. And the men's rights movement people may not like that I say that, but when you think about defending the country, you think about working on an oil rig, you think about all the things we need men to do because they're bigger and stronger than us. You can't be crying on an oil rig. You can't be emotionally reactive because, Bob over there said something to you. You got to focus. These jobs are dangerous. So it just doesn't make sense. We can't have a country of crying women. We just can't. It doesn't mean, though, I will say to the men's rights movement people, I am not saying that, men have to do all their responsibility and they have to do this. From watching my content, I am over here saying what I think women need to do. I think we both have duties and responsibilities, and I think they both go along with how we're made, how we are innately made. It's clear, and you want to say we're the same and we should be the same and equality and stuff, but literally one of us makes the babies and feeds the babies. And one of us is big and strong. We are not the same. We both have duties and responsibilities. And it doesn't work if men are not emotionally regulated. Women need to be too. I'm definitely in favor of that. But this is trying to weaken men, is what this is. And it's trying to pull them away from the way God made them. And it's trying to shame the fathers for trying to raise their sons properly. And I don't know how many of you have been in divorce court, family court, as they call it, because they like to say opposites, where it's like, the father has rules, so he's abusive. There are punishments, so he's abusive. Structure. Categories. Men, women, right, wrong. There are categories and structures to life. All of this kind of stuff wants to tear them away. And that creates a lot of chaos. And I think it definitely affects all of society. And I'd like to know, which way are we going? Are we getting better in society or are we not? Parents often unwittingly contribute to the problem, agrees Melinda Winner Mover, a parenting and science journalist and author of How to Raise Kids Who Aren't A-Holes. Isn't that lovely? That's not crass. We know from the research that parents talk about emotions less with sons than daughters. And when they do talk about feelings with boys, they typically focus on anger. Yeah, because they try to make them not boys. Boys are going to get angrier. They're going to be more confrontational and combative. And you know what? When they start getting like that, that's the time for dad to take over. Honestly, do you know where I learned that? The Godfather, Kevin Samuels. Listening to I think I've seen just about every interview he's ever done with women. And that's what he said over and over again, like at 5 years old, dad needs to get in there. And it makes total sense because the dad can understand all that stuff and sort it out. The women are like, don't do that. Don't be that. Be nice. Be nice. So what are you saying to boys when you say that? You're saying, hold it in. And isn't that the opposite of what you're telling them to do here? You're saying, no, let it out, but only let out the things we want you to and act the way we want you to and invite girls to all your spaces. Because guess what? You might as well get used to it. There aren't any men's spaces for you when you get older. And if you try to form one, well, that's misogyny. Oh, you might be allowed to watch football with the boys on Sunday. But guess what? The women now like football too. So you can't even have that. And I know a lot of you guys may not be like sports ball people, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that might be why you're not. You're like, I don't need a play date. So this is part one. On the second part 2 of this article, we are going to learn about how they shame baby boys. I am not kidding you. That is the next part, how they shame baby boys. They There is no end to how they will blame you and shame you and tell you this is how you need to be. And you certainly shouldn't be how you were created. Because at the end of the day, they are trying to convince you that there is no order, that there is no perfect order that God created. They want to tear it down. They want to tear down the differences between men and women. They want to tear down the idea that women are the caretakers of their family in the way, that they were historically. They want to tear that down. No, we're equal. Some dads stay at home and that's fine. And some women stay at home and both can work and do whatever you want. And that's what it is. Do whatever you want. Let's see, what does that remind me of? Oh, yeah. Aleister Crowley, a Satan guy. Do as thou wilt. At the end of the day, it's do as thou wilt. Do what you feel like. And they encourage men to do what you feel like. And that's not good. That's when they don't have structure and the stoicism they need to face the world. It's infuriating. And the next part is even worse. This thing gets worse as it goes. But we're breaking it into 2 parts so I can fully cover it and flesh it out and reveal to you guys the agenda. And share with you that you are not alone and it is not your fault. Okay? It's not. I know you're getting that message from all sides, even from your own mothers. But it's a lie. It's a total lie. And I'm so tired of seeing men and boys suffer because of it. I'm sick of it. So I will shout into the wind for as long as it takes. And I want to try to tell as many men and women the truth. I know we can't turn back society, but we can turn back some people, right? Some people can be rescued. And that's what we should do. So hit that like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Help me share this message. Help me show men that they are seen and cared about. Literally, some of their lives depend on it. So with that, I will remind you, as I always do, protect your peace, feed your souls, because at the end of the day, you guys know no one's coming to rescue you, and I hate that, but it's the truth. I love you. God loves you. And I'll see you guys on the next one.